You know, I'm not a tough guy, but I've done some things that only tough guys have done. I find myself thinking back to those times, those memories that go round and round in my head. The freedom of having nothing but the saddle and the horse below me. The first logs we laid here. The joy of when my daughters were born, and the loss when I realized I would never throw the ball with my dad again. Looking back at it all now, I can see that most of what I am and what I have become has happened right here on these 10 acres we call the Outland. Every spring when the snow melts and the sun is shining, I get that restless feeling. I know it's time to do something I've done for the past 18 years, and that's get out there and get Outland Field ready to play baseball. What started as a notion has grown into a pretty big deal around these parts. Football might be the best sport to watch on TV. Basketball probably has the best athletes. But baseball, it's got the smells and the sounds and the physics and this perfect diamond shape out there. If I get my field set up like that, that's a big day for me. Hundreds of people have come and played ball on our little field of dreams out here on Meeteetse Creek, and it's hard for me not to think back to all those who helped me along the way and all those turns in my life that have led me to where I am now. I love the silence of these Wyoming valleys, the feelings of the wind blowing through my hair, and being able to see those breathtaking Rocky Mountains from my window. Over the years, I've grown to love that, but I started out in a place a lot different than here. I was born in the city and grew up in the city and went to college in the city, bought my first house, had my first serious girlfriend, all in the city. I had a pretty good job back in those days, and I was younger, 20, and my girlfriend and I had a real nice house, and I was feeling pretty smug about it. I thought I was kind of doing what I was supposed to. I remember one day, though, I went out on the front porch, and we had a little swing out there, and I was going to sit out there and just tell myself how smart I was to have all this stuff at such a young age. And something popped into my head, and it scared me. And what popped in was, what's next? And I couldn't answer that. I didn't know what next was. I was withdrawn for a while and worried about it. I didn't think I could stay in the city. And 2 weeks later, I was in Du Bois, pumping gas at the Red Horse Mobile for $2 an hour. During that time, I figured out that the people with the most interesting jobs were the cowboys. So I bought myself a truck, bought a saddle, and won my horse Smokey in a poker game. He wasn't the biggest horse, but he was mine. And without him, life wouldn't have been the same. I figured out right away I was way in over my head. So when I took the first job, I could look like a cowboy, I could talk like a cowboy, and then when I got hired on those early ranch jobs I had and the early hunting camp jobs, I figured out I'd have to learn enough before they figured out I didn't know anything that I might be able to keep my job. And I did. And so for the next 8 years of my life in Crowheart, Du Bois, I became a cowboy. Sometimes in the middle of the winter, you'd go into a bar and you'd look over, and there'd be an old cowboy sitting there, and you knew he was beat up pretty bad, probably couldn't ride, been hurt a lot. And he'd be there early in the morning. He'd turn around and you'd see these hollow eyes looking at you, and you'd go, man, that poor old son of a bitch. And then you got to thinking, or I did anyway, is that That's what happens to a lot of cowboys. You hang around too much and you don't end up with much more than what you started with. I was getting pretty close to 30 at that time, and I heard about this 10-acre bunch of sand and sagebrush over here on Meeteetse Creek, and then I started looking towards maybe having something a little more when I was 40 or 50, and I went ahead and bought that 10 acres. I brought some friends over and some horses, and we went up on Rattlesnake Mountain up out of Cody to get the logs for this house. And we spent part of that summer getting the logs down off the hill, and I just put them in a pile out here on my 10 acres. And right at that same time, I bumped into a girl that I had met. We both worked for the Forest Service over in DuBois back in those days, and she invited me to go to the Park County Fair with her. And somewhere there on the roller coaster or the Ferris wheel or somewhere along the lines, we figured out we had stronger feelings for each other. So I invited her over here and showed her my 10 acres and my little pile of logs, and told her that I was going to build this little cabin, and I was going to do it without electricity, and this was going to be where I made my last stand, and she kind of liked that idea. In the summer of 1981, with a tent, a pile of logs, and a dream, we set out on a path which would change our lives forever. We could put down 6 logs every day, and that was a full day. And of course, we didn't have electricity, we didn't have running water, and every afternoon it'd get pretty hot. We'd get a little discouraged and have a lot of sawdust in our eyes, and one or the other of us would say, "Quit, it's good, let's go down to the creek." So sometimes we didn't even grab towels. It was so hot, we just ran down there, stripped down, jumped in the water, cooled off, set out the hot afternoon, and got back to work in the evening. That first summer, we worked every day except the 4th of July. And we took the 4th of July off, and we went to Cody, watched the parade, watched the rodeo, bought some fireworks, came back, shot the fireworks off, went to bed, and got up next day and worked the rest of the summer. You know, we laid the final logs in mid-September, and middle October, Deb and I walked out there with her family and my family and got married. In September of 1983, my first daughter was born. And in the summer of 1986, my second daughter was born. Those first years we lived without electricity, and we were content with that. Cooking on a coal-burning stove, lighting by candlelight, heating the house by a wood stove. And then our daughters came along, and it got to be a lot of work. We got electricity, and things became a lot easier. But I don't know that they were any better. Times were hard in those days, and sometimes because of that, feelings can change. It was around that time we realized that the Outland was more my dream than Deb's, and after 12 years of being together, we decided to separate. For anyone, those were trying times, but through it all, I still had my daughters. The girls and I were very close, and we always have been and always will be, but I found myself in a situation again that was pretty challenging, and that was the money part of it. And there were some days there that it was just pretty much touch and go for being able to hang on to this place. It was about that time again that I realized that just the basics is all I could afford, and if the girls and I, my daughters, were going to have any entertainment, we're going to have to do it ourselves right here. And I built a little bit of a baseball field out here, just a little small thing that wasn't half as big as this house when they were little girls, and we went out there and played ball, and that was part of entertainment in the summer. And as times were getting tough there, I needed a little bit more of a challenge. I was walking out in my horse pasture one day, and I thought, you know, I think this is big enough for a baseball field. As it turned out, that baseball field's kind of been the center of what goes on around here in the summertime for about the past 18 years. Eventually word spread, and the maker of the movie Field of Dreams heard about the Outland Field. He said, "Bob, you built it and they came." And now thinking back, he was absolutely right. If it's just playing catch with a few people, or having hundreds camping out and playing during the Memorial Weekend, I think we've really got something special going on here. My father took an interest in this place, and he played catch with me, and I've still got his old glove, his left-handed, his old glove out there on the porch. And when he was dying about 18 years ago, he called a family reunion, and he called it here at my place instead of his place in Colorado Springs. We carried my father out to the field, and he was sick. We bundled him up, and he watched the very first game on this field, and then he went home and died. The logs of this house, in one way or another, have helped hold my life together. Their cracks and lines bring back the memories of all the work it took to build this place. The landmarks of my life surround me every day, and that lets me remember all those times I will cherish forever. When I was young and limber, when my girls were toddlers and learning to ride a bike out on that road and get cactus thorns in their tires, and I'd have to patch the tires, learning to drive up and down this road, and a whole lot of that, my life that's been important to me, is reflected through the memories I have of the Outland. When the sun goes down and I turn the lights on around the house, I sometimes go out and just look at those same stars that Deb and I watched from our tent so many years ago. And in the morning, I sit at the breakfast table and look out that big window and see Smoky's Hill. He's the horse I won in the poker game in Du Bois. He's the horse that helped skid out these logs. He was my first horse. He was my daughter's first horse. I look out that window and up on the hill, and it takes me right back to the first year I was here, when Smoky was my horse and my daughter's horse. And then he got old and died, but look out and see Smoky's Hill there, and reminds me of when we were all young. The life that I have now and what I own and my daughters, I follow that progression backwards, and it all started that summer of 1981.